Hey guys, welcome back to Think Shank. We are coming at you after Game 2 of the NBA Finals. Boston beating out Dallas again, this time by a little bit less. Just a 7-point win from Boston. It looked like it was going to be much worse, more similar to Game 1, without a late comeback from Dallas, which we've all seen that they are capable of, as well as the Celtics choking it up. And everything culminating in a miraculous chase down block by none other than Derek White on PJ Washington. Would have cut the lead to just 3 with about 45-ish seconds left, I believe. Let me first start with Boston. This is going to be pretty quick because I think at this point we have a pretty clear understanding of Boston's strengths, weaknesses, and obviously the ball is more so in Dallas's court. Positives, number one, just outstanding effort. If you tuned into Jaylen Brown's postgame, he mentioned they need to be the hardest working team, and ultimately that was the differentiator in this game. I happen to agree with him. Most of that effort manifests itself in the excellent team defense that I think is really the biggest takeaway on their end. They showed an incredible amount of resiliency, not just offensively, pushing through the horrid three-point shooting, but defensively, I was just so impressed. We saw flashes of what we're used to with Porzingis chasing down Maxey early, stuffing him from behind. Tatum stealing Luka off a behind-the-back pass that Luka makes like 3 times a game. Tatum also stripped Kyrie one-on-one late in that fourth quarter as well. You had Drew and I believe Derek White combining for that dagger deflation turnover from PJ Washington and Luka, where 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, PJ takes the inbounds pass from Luka, brings it just before getting it half court, almost made it, but decided not to get there, and then passed it back too lazily to Luka. Drew got a hand on it. Luka's still in the backcourt. Luka knows that they don't have much time to get it past half court because, again, PJ didn't get it there fast enough, and then tries to get the ball right back to PJ, and by that point, his defender, I believe it was Derek White, comes right back into frame, steals the ball, and I believe Dallas at that point was down by 7 or something, and so tough looks, inexperience, pressure, all of those things. So the culmination of all of that is the incredible chase down block by Derek White, just the admirable level of effort expended on that chase down block by Derek overshadows the slight push in the back from Jaylen Brown. It doesn't look great. I don't know. Sometimes they call that, sometimes they don't. I understand why in a vacuum it's annoying. This against any other team would have been a PJ dunk. Almost blocked Gafford too, I believe. Was one of the centers, poster child of hustle plays defensively, especially in the open floor. Just so quick, so fast, so good, so smart. The timely bailout threes, I think, were just huge. Pritchard to end the third quarter makes the more than half-court heave, banks in a 3 to end the quarter. How you end quarters is just so important. Everybody says it all the time. With 8 minutes left in the fourth, Derek White's bailout 3 from about, 26 feet or so, just swishes it, end of shot clock. Tremendous defensive possession by Dallas. And I think that was in the midst of Dallas trying to amount one final push, one final comeback, which eventually got moving. But those are just the examples of types of plays where it's just so deflating. And it's really, really hard to come back from, especially when, again, you're trying to make up ground and you make bailout threes when, as a team, you have been woeful all game. Really tough to overcome that. Negatives, of course, are going to be threes. Boston over here goes 10 for 36. Not even 26% from 3, 39 attempts. I think Dallas did themselves a service by closing out a little bit smarter, being a little bit more physical, that kind of stuff on the perimeter. I think that was a part of it, but I think primarily this was an example of kind of playing their own first game when you think about it, as far as they threw the first punch in game 1, so now what is Dallas going to present there that way? The natural acclimation game on Boston's side. And again, when you play a high-variance style of offense, this is naturally going to happen anyway, but kind of how Dallas likes to play. Typically, they lose the first game, but are very, very good in game 2 after intaking the data analyzing it and figuring things out. Let's switch over to Dallas. All right, positives. Number one, limiting perimeter shooting. Again, did themselves a service by, again, closing out faster, being more physical in general, understanding the personnel a little bit better. Everything just felt a lot more crisp on defense. They had made a three in the first quarter of every single game this season, regular season and playoffs. Took until 30 seconds remaining in the first quarter for them to even hit their first one. I just think that went to show about the pace, energy, defensive adjustments, that kind of stuff. Two, glimpses of improved performance, I think, both from PJ Washington as well as Daniel Gafford. PJ did a better job of just presenting more pressure. It's not going to be sufficient for him to just spot up all day and all night, just like the Oklahoma City matchup. Obviously, PJ took note of that, and the Mavs coaching staff took note of that. And so now, presenting a bit more pressure, not just settling for these spot-up threes, actually attacking closeouts, which for a guy with his physical dimensions and physical tools, just athletic and long and what have you, I think is a tremendous, tremendous need for Dallas, because when you look at Celtics roster, I'm not going to say the only thing, but a huge advantage, if you will, that Dallas could maybe take better advantage of is the size that Dallas presents, specifically at that 3 and 4, I think, when it comes to maybe not necessarily just raw height, but just the level of length and athleticism. So attacking closeouts, taking lead in transition, covering ground faster. He's like a raptor in the open floor. Pressure and a lot of the experience and the skill development required for some of these tough finishes in transition, like that last one that Derek White finished. A guy with PJ's physical tools and stature just should never be blocked from behind. I just don't think that should ever actually happen. I think, he clearly was triangulating all of the things he needed to do based off of only Jaylen Brown, couldn't get a good eye on Derek White coming at him from the back end. So I guess there is that. But yeah, you saw PJ take it off the closeout, getting into the teeth of the defense, taking it to guys in transition, looking for actual mismatches in the open floor. Just huge. That's what they need. Gafford, I just thought had a much bigger, better presence on specifically the glass on both ends. In the first two possessions of the entire game, Gafford had two pretty great activity plays off the offensive glass. The biggest difference between him and Lively, for example, is the rebounding, is Gafford's ability to, yes, he can finish plays and get up high and try to deter shots and basically make shots harder. But as far as pressuring shots to make them harder and making misses and getting rebounds as well. Negatives. Number one, of course, let's just start with Luka. 8 turnovers in the game. Really, really tough there. A couple of them, I wouldn't say were his fault. Just like the PJ one where PJ stopped maybe a foot too early before getting to half court and then throwing it backwards to Luka, which then got tipped by Drew Holiday, and there was not enough time for Luka to make any other play besides try to get it back to PJ, who did not make it any easier for Luka to do that by walling off his guy, I believe it was Derek White, from being able to make the play on the ball that he ended up making, with 4 minutes left. Some of the other ones I don't love, though. The behind-the-back pass that Tatum stole, a little bit too predictable there. Definitely a few concentration errors. It's pretty admirable that he hasn't had this kind of a game yet. So far, even against Minnesota, he hasn't really had an 8-turnover game. Why? Well, the reason is Boston is cutting off the circulation to everything not named Luka on the Dallas Mavericks roster. And where does this start? Kyrie continues to have his shooting woes. 16 points, 2 rebounds, 6 assists, 7 for 18 field goals, 0 for 3 from 3. He's really trying to go off the catch as he typically does, leveraging his quickness, his handle, all of those things. Luka's more comfortable working and picking apart your half-court defense systematically and methodologically. Kyrie is a chaos agent. He wants chaos. He wants ball movement. He wants misdirection. He wants to be able to get half steps on guys. He has to create a space somehow, right, for certain shots and finishes. Loves to get out in transition, where you see his incredible finishing. And Boston isn't allowing that, primarily because of shot making from the jump that Kyrie is failing to provide. The effectiveness of Dallas's role players has traditionally largely came from over-helping Dallas's 2 stars, because they are too good to contain in one-on-one matchups. Therefore, it's going to make things easier. Kyrie is really struggling offensively against Boston's half-court defense making those one-on-one defensive assignments break down and warranting more attention. And even when the others, Kyrie included, get looks from the outside, not knocking them down. That's going to be really problematic for Dallas especially, because they need to have a pick your poison type of environment in place for them to maximize all of their players. Because of, in this matchup, they are working from a talent shortage in comparison. They only have two guys that can take anybody off the dribble, right? Who can create advantages for them. PJ, I think, is probably the only half person who has shown to be somewhat reliable at attacking closeouts. But even then, how many good kick-out passes do you see from him? How many reads do you ever see him making? Do you ever see him throw a lob like Karl-Anthony Towns maybe, or something like that? No, you don't. This is all culminating in the pitiful perimeter pressure that Dallas is presenting here. They only made 6 total threes in this game, and 4 of them were by Luka. The rest of the Mavs roster went 2 for 17 from 3. Kyrie, Derek Jones, and Josh Green combined for 0 threes. If you're not hitting shots from the outside, boss is going to load up and cut up, like just crowd your driving lanes even more willing to invite you to try to pass these passes out. They'll recover to their shooters, but they don't feel threatened enough by the outside shooting, nor should they. So that just makes it even harder for Luka to get downhill and create anything. Yeah, it really felt like Luka was quintessentially dragging a team, kind of like LeBron in like 2018, insufficient production from the others. So take Kyrie, put him in a box, put him over there. Let's just think about the others for a second here. Really underwhelming. PJ, of course, goes 1 for 5 from 3. D. Jones, no threes. Josh Green, no threes. Then you have Derek Jones, who's only 8 feet away from the basket, who I believe either got his own rebound and got somebody else's rebound, but ends up in a one-on-one matchup with Derek White, maybe 8 feet from the rim. I mean, he doesn't even look at the rim. You know they're not going to send help on you because you don't take shots at the rim or make shots at the rim. Kind of Ben Simmons-y, where you're like, I feel like this is probably a time where you should try. Or like Rudy Gobert passing out of help defense from Jamal Murray because he literally cannot dribble the basketball. Insane. And then even later on, you have Derek Jones airballing threes, airballing open threes. Not good. A couple good rim runs. I believe Gafford and Lively each got kind of a floater over the top. Again, like Boston hasn't changed, really. They're doing the same thing. They're sitting in the gaps, challenging the others to start making shots. They're going to guard Luke and Kyrie, air quote, one-on-one, but they're going to bring guys sitting in the gaps to prevent them from getting a clean waltz to the basket and hopefully getting them to end their dribble early. Basically, they're speeding them up and speeding up their decision-making where they're scrambling midair and trying to make plays. And again, it all roots from the lack of pressure coming from the outside. The inexperience in pressure of the stage felt like it's had its moments for Dallas. You had Luka going 4 for 8 from the free throw line. You lose a game by 7 points, and you miss 8 free throws. Those are precious opportunities to score for Dallas. It's clear at this point they are struggling against Boston's apparatus. That is like finding gold. Kyrie as well. He had looks too. It's not like Kyrie's honestly taking that many bad, ill-advised shots. He's not able to generate really great quality looks to begin with. Also, just not converting on more open and quality looks than we're used to him missing. A couple really quick offensive ideas that I have for Dallas. Number 1 is transition. We've all heard and seen the advantages that come with transition, why Dallas went out, got Derek Jones Jr., got PJ Washington, even got Gafford, is for that speed at that size to help push the pace for the team in the open floor. In compound with Boston's incredible half-court defense. I mean, they are just fantastic. And even in transition, I mean, you saw what happened to PJ Washington. You saw KP chase down Maxi Kleber and stuff him. Those are not great flashes, as is, but we all know transition is just inherently going to present better opportunity to get fouled or get points. It just is what it is. PJ Washington breakaway dunk attempt and still with Derek White hot on his trail. Run that simulation 100 times. How many times is PJ going to win out? Probably most of the time. Give the ball up, Luka. Their pace was really not good in this game. It didn't feel like. It felt like a lot of just stagnant, stationary stuff. Another thing I noticed was slashing. Luka got 2 assists back-to-back from a slashing Josh Green who handed it off to a also slashing Derrick Jones Jr. to the basket. I don't think either guy was even touched. That's how fast and crisp the passing and cutting was. The very next play, Derrick Jones Jr. had another well-timed cut and slash off of just a classic Luka back down. It's very simple. When Luka, one of the best players on planet Earth, doing his back downs and trying to get good positioning for his turnarounds or up and unders or whatever it is, Boston has to be watching him. He is more than capable of making any pass with even the slightest amount of daylight. So all of Boston is going to be astutely attentive to every single movement he does. What does that mean? If you're Derrick Jones Jr. or you're Josh Green, who are long or very, very fast, I don't know how we're not getting way more slashing and off-ball movement as is. I understand the fixation with threes. Against an opponent like this, which is so in tune, they are all so bought in their game plan, suffocating the circulation to the head of the offense. In Dallas's case is Luka Doncic. They're so focused on him. Everyone else just needs to be moving, sustaining advantages for Dallas's role players. Dallas's role players are the textbook role players that are like avatars in a video game that literally only have one skill on like the set of skills in a list. There's just like 3-point shooting and defense. Like those are the two only things. That's not how you can beat Boston. You beat Boston with quickness and activity. Like an Oklahoma City team versus Boston, my dream scenario. They're basically the mirror images of each other. You have to be leveraging guys like Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, how much gravity they have, and move off the ball. And that's why Jokic is so effective. If he's out of the post and everyone else is basically spaced around him, somebody's got their back to somebody. And if you can time it right, again, just like Aaron Gordon does out of the dunker spot or what have you, automatic dunk or secondary slip, like you just cut in just to rapid fire the ball right back out. Like that's the kind of stuff you need. Quickness, you need ball movement, you need to get them in rotation. If they are just gonna stand there and load up and just very, very slowly move on over and rotate, you're gonna lose. That's why you need attacking closeouts, slashing, relocating, all of that. Last but not least, Kyrie Irving just needs to be better on offense. Requirement 0 for Dallas to stand a chance in the series is Kyrie Irving plays like a bona fide, experienced veteran superstar in this league that can put up 25 a night while also facilitating. And then if you sprinkle on top of that, my earlier ideas about pushing the pace in transition, having guys move off the ball more, slashing, that is what is required for teams to break down this incredibly rigid and fortified Boston defense. It has to be fast, and it has to be crisp, and it has to be confident. As soon as you're not confident, they're not even going to bother with you. I don't know how many wide open threes Derrick Jones Jr. got tonight. I think by the end, most people were like, don't even shoot the ball, Derrick. Just drive to the basket. Even, honestly, at this point, there's like, try to get fouled. Just stop chucking threes. Like, it's just not happening. Kyrie and the others can't both lay eggs. You need Kyrie to play well. Luka's proven he's going to play well. If those two are playing well, then the others play well is typically the equation and the process here. You can't have a balanced equation with those two things lacking, right? Luka's the only given here. The better Kyrie plays, the easier it is for that third variable to shape up positively for Dallas. Overall takeaways for the game. I thought early on in this game, this is going to be the revenge of the analytics game for Boston, where they just shoot pitifully from 3, and someone was going to get hot for Dallas. Eventually, the analytics game, we're not going to shake out in Boston's favor this time around. But again, the Boston defense, I just can't say enough about it. Got a 7-3 shot blocker who's proven to even be able to get back in transition and block guys. And you have an all-defensive guard duo at the top, really long, switchable, athletic guys otherwise. It's like the perfect anti-serum to Dallas's offensive scheme. Kind of reminds me of how well the defensive scheme that Minnesota had in place with its own roster construction looked against Denver, feeling like we're seeing a parallel universe where Boston was designed by the former GM of Dallas in order to stop what would soon to be a best player in the world in Luka Doncic. Really, really handsy, really great defensive guards for Kyrie, basically, who was supposed to be able to offload that offensive burden from Luka. And we all saw how much of a problem I think the Clippers, for example, were presenting. You have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. I think Kawhi is almost the only human being I've ever seen meaningfully and consistently make Luka look mortal ever. Celtics are essentially what Ty Lue and Steve Ballmer wanted the Clippers to ultimately be, which is a hyper switchable team with a million different shooters who are all within the median band of height. Boston is just too capable from a team apparatus perspective of slowing down Luka from getting you in his vice within 15 feet of the basket, freezing the whole video game. Boston is just best equipped to have guys that can, one, do a good job at slowing him down at the point of attack from even getting to where he wants to go anyway, which is in the paint, but then also have guys with the defensive instincts, talent to crowd in the gaps, to swipe at the ball, to get him to end the dribble early, dart out to the three-point line as needed to still get a quality contest in place, willing to sprint 89 feet and block PJ Washington from behind with a 6-inch height disadvantage. So it's just really tough sledding. That is my number one take. I mean, this is just an incredibly defensive team. I would be very curious, for example, though, what would have happened this iteration of Boston versus Denver this year, as opposed to this series where so much of the conversation is on how well Boston can fortify itself from the outside in and the Luka Kyrie penetration and how well they can fortify against that from their switching and their off-ball schemes, to a Denver system where they work inside out. And then it becomes a question of, can KP stay in the game, even with his height advantage? Can he move his feet fast enough to not follow Jokic? Can he still slow him down? I think we can all agree Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, a lot of their perimeter guys are not nearly as effective as defenders off ball than they are on ball, and even more so when you're working inside out. That puts even more pressure on your ability to be a sound off-ball defender because you're literally facing the opposite direction from your man. It is very hard to stop Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets for that reason, first and foremost. Dallas's defense was deserving of winning this game. Straight up. They had more than enough chances at the free throw line. They had more than enough open looks that they didn't convert, specifically for Kyrie, Derrick Jones Jr. I'm sorry. Boston comes out of the game. They shot 10 of 39 from three, and 2 of those 10 were BS bailouts that Peyton Pritchard chucked at the buzzer, and then Derek White hits a 26-foot bomb at the close of the shot clock. I don't think anybody expected that shot to go in. You had Tatum having another really bad game. Dallas is clearly loading up on the Tatum drives to the basket. I think the biggest variable here is, like I'm saying, it comes down to Dallas's offensive potency. Dallas's offense has not traditionally been challenged in the way that it has, and it's not going to win the way that it has against this type of half-court defense that Boston presents. They're the optimal defensive team against this offensive system. Against Denver, no shot it would be half as effective, in my own opinion. It has started with the stars, and then the others get involved, right? That's how it's supposed to go. What you're seeing now is a very well-coached and primed defensive unit and scheme suffocating and cutting off the circulation to this offensive body for Dallas, which is then rendering the others either not involved or they're put in situations that they're not used to. The role players for Dallas just aren't able to sustain advantages for a secondary action, a third action. If you look across the court at Boston, they have 5 separate guys who can take anyone off the dribble. They can initiate one-on-one. They can get their own shot. What does that mean? That means every single guy is ready to drive, kick, and then you're just doing the Oklahoma City, sharpen the knife, get a better look, and eventually someone's going to make a mistake, or physically somebody won't be able to keep up with their rotation or assignment, and you will just inevitably get a good look. Dallas can't really do that. It's becoming increasingly clear, similar to Denver, that nobody besides Kyrie and Luka can put the ball on the deck, even attacking a closeout like PJ, for example, you don't see him making reads off of that. You see him attacking the rim, but you don't see a kick out for a secondary action often. You don't see someone else on Dallas make a timely cut when PJ attacks a closeout for PJ to make a nice read, right? Like, you don't see those types of plays. So not only are they pretty much inept at creating their own advantages, but they can't even really sustain advantages that Luka or Kyrie are creating. If you can't attack guys one-on-one by yourself or sustain advantages when you get kickouts by attacking closeouts, and you can't knock down the spot up three when you first get the kickout, there is literally nothing more that Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving could do, even if they were hitting all of their shots. Right? Like I said before about the equation, Kyrie, Luka, others. If Kyrie's down, others need to go up. Luka's going to be fine. If both of those are down, there is physically no way for Dallas to win a game besides Luka Doncic going 12 for 16 from three or something. It's not possible. They literally present no threat at all if you are not hitting spot up threes or attacking closeouts and making good decisions off of that. Boston is the easiest life on earth. All you have to do is continue doing what you're doing and just basically inviting Luka to take tough shots. Nobody else can do anything else. Keep doing the same thing for Kai and riding that, and then everything else is going to be fine. The issue was before with Oklahoma City and Minnesota was that Luka and Kyrie could not be stopped against Ant and Mike Conley or Jaden McDaniels. Well, now you have Drew Holiday and you have Derek White, and you have a mix of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, even Al Horford, who can be very handsy and physical because he knows he has all this help behind him because, again, nobody cares about anyone not named Kyrie or Luka. It's going to have to come from either Kyrie or the others. I know it's very simple to say that way. I don't think it's realistic to expect PJ Washington or Derek Jones Jr. to suddenly get really good at making Jokic flip shots about 10 feet from the basket, or to expect them to somehow learn how to make really nice reads to kick back out and start an offensive machine like Boston, where everybody is a guard, basically, regardless of your size and stature. Everybody can do all three, pass, dribble, and shoot. Realistically, it really comes down to Kyrie being able to hitting the shots that he is able to create for himself, feast on overhelps, increase the quality of those looks for the others, and basically have the others ride on their coattails the way that they have. I just want to say a few things quickly because Tatum's catching a lot of heat. I think it's coming from ignorant people who don't really understand basketball, and then receiving too much glory for his team's success. So I think that it's not fair to compare Jason Tatum to other superstars in the league, apples to apples. If Boston wins the title, it is not because they have a superstar in Jason Tatum on the roster. That is not the leading reason why. It's not even the third reason why. As we're seeing in this finals matchup, it is entirely possible that for the top six, for this iteration of the Boston Celtics, there is more two-way talent and overall playoff experience than the 2017 Golden State Warriors. Every single one of these guys, basically minus Al Horford maybe, can switch onto anybody on Dallas's team, defend at a reasonable level, or the rest of the team can compensate for that schematically, no problem. All of them can pass, dribble, and shoot. They can create their own shot, make reads in traffic, be athletic enough to sprint back the entire floor. Their shortest guy got a chase down block to seal the win in the finals. So I just say that to say, number one, the team itself is incredibly dominant without Jason Tatum. The Celtics without Jason Tatum tie the Cleveland Cavaliers for fourth place in the Eastern Conference this year. Like, I'm not kidding. I truly think that is a reality. Jaylen Brown is proving to be a top 12 player after this finals run. I'm telling you right now. Which actually, might I remind you, this is really their only full quality opponent this entire postseason for a potential 7-game series after being one of the most dominant teams we've ever seen. And they have the easiest path to the finals most of this generation has ever seen, I think. He isn't tasked with the responsibility or level of pressure that a typical superstar would be because there's so much talent, again, on both sides of the ball. Both sides of the ball. There is so much talent on this team. His role as a result of that for the overall team objective of winning a title is not to be a Luka Doncic. It's not to be, hey, Jason, have a 40% usage rate and make 90% of our decisions. That's just not the right way to play for this type of team. Credit to Joe Mazzulla, credit to Brad Stevens for aligning visions in that sense. But when the team is, I believe they're 4-0 or 5-0 when Jason Tatum shoots under 40% in the playoffs. If your superstar is performing that poorly and you're still winning, I don't know if we can call him a superstar. I think that's just math. Like that should be like an objective thing here. That leads us to point C, which is even within his limited role, again, reduced from the regular season, he is categorically underperforming offensively. I think that's fair to spotlight. Granted, it is incredible what he is impacting and what sort of value he is presenting outside of the box score, outside of the offensive production numbers, but it's unfortunately going to get to a point where it's just that simple. If you are performing that poorly offensively, it's really, really hard to argue that you are driving and delivering that much value otherwise, that you are indeed a superstar. If you're not being tasked with the role of superstar and you're not even excelling in the role that you then end up playing, what are we even talking about? I'm sorry. Like, I understand, again, do we want team level accolades? Like, we have the Olympics this summer, right? Are we just gonna give everybody iso ball until we all just get enough shots that we all feel happy with each other? No. You have to have a scheme in place. Everyone needs a role. It's just how it is, unfortunately. And so congratulations and respect to Jason Tatum for buying into a system, knowing that he was going to get flamed for it. He knew he was going to have to defer a little bit more offensively, do the dirty work that wasn't going to show up in the box score. Accolades and props and everything else, that's incredible. But we can't pretend like that compensates for the fact that he does not carry as much responsibility, isn't under as much pressure to deliver and execute as your Lukas, your Jokic's, your Embiid's, all of your other superstars. And I'm sorry. And the team level decision-making and schematics, that's not his fault. But the fact that he is struggling even in a limited capacity indicates to me it is justifiable to at least present or postulate the question of how effective could Jason Tatum be in his own team here? I know it shouldn't be that simple, but it's just like back with Golden State in their golden age of the Golden State Empire when they were running the whole league, right? And the Bay was like, oh, Steph's better than LeBron now. Like, he's like the best offensive player. He's got to be the best player. Everybody knows he was never the best player in the entire NBA. At no point, at 0 point ever was Steph Curry the best player. Ever. And you know why a lot of the public consciousness felt that way? It's because his team was unbelievable, especially after 2016 when they got KD. And that is also why KD gets laughed at. Obviously, a lot of it comes from the fact that he chose to go there after losing in a 7-game series. But if you just hold that aside, it doesn't matter how you got on the team. What only matters is the specific seasons, start to finish, who's on the roster. That team was so good already that you were just inherently not under that level of scrutiny or pressure, carrying that much responsibility. There's way too many ways to make up grounds for your own mistakes or your own limitations. And granted, credit again to Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla, because ultimately they are the two who deserve the most credit of anybody in the Boston organization for constructing the roster and constructing and designing the schematics that have maximized this team in ways that we haven't maybe actually ever seen this century. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. The level of two-way dominance from a schematic and talent levels perspective is unbelievable. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope this is really insightful. We'll see what we get. Game 3 coming up fast. I think it's going to take a pretty significant turnaround for specifically Kyrie Irving or Dallas's others. On top of that, you have Boston's just perimeter shooting. Very, very curious to see what we're going to get on the road. So we'll see. All right. Thank you guys so much. And until next time.